Hello and welcome to another We Interview video here on gamingtrend.com. My name is Adam Marino, and today our special guest is Gary Miranda to talk about his work with Spider-Man 2, Fortnite, and more, his company, Injected Audio Senses, and his experience throughout his career. Gary, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. I love your setup.
Oh, thank you.
That
Thank you. I
that's
appreciate it.
so cool. Like just it out of a movie kind of thing.
Oh, cool, cool. I hope it looks like that.
It
I
truly
tried,
does.
trying to piece it together.
Well, I wanted to start here. You've got a lot of story-driven games in your repertoire, including Spider-Man Miles Morales, Spider-Man
Mhm.
2. They both have movie quality cutscenes and
Right.
movement in general.
Mhm.
From the sound perspective, how challenging or easy for you is it to do a sound design for a movie-esque game like those versus a playful, more like stereotypical video game such as Fortnite?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they all have their interesting. They all have their unique challenges and paths to take to get in and design for these things. The difference even between like what we did for Miles versus Spider-Man 2. With Miles, we were very much we did a lot more cinematic work, so it was definitely much more on the cinematics directly themselves. And so it was really easy to kind of just sit in that one zone right there for just working on cinematic audio. Um, but with Spider-Man 2, we didn't do any cinematic work for. There was more in-game work, so a lot more just focused on assets that are going directly in game. So it's just definitely different approaches there. Where with cinematic, I can look at something here, from 0 to a minute and a half or whatever it's going to be, and I can kind of look at this contained thing, and I can really put focus points in there, narratively, from a mixed standpoint. But then for Spider-Man 2, it's more like, hey, how are these assets going to fit with everything else in the entire game and in the
Yeah.
entire world of what we have, presented to us there. So it's definitely just different takes on the approaches and how we try to jump in and do that kind of stuff.
And how does that compare to what you've done with other games, like Fortnite, like Midnight Suns, where it's a little bit more of like that stereotypical gaming experience? It's not a lot less cinematic
Mhm.
and more like, hey, you have to just, the sound is there. You got to just fill it in.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, with the cinematic approach, like I said, it definitely gives. There's different. Like we can really draw out like what are the focus points of this scene.
Yeah.
What do we need to focus on? What do we need to hear at this given point in time? And it could be anything from like, hey, we want the music to give you that emotion there. We want to focus on the music part of this. Let's duck out the sound design a little bit more. So then we kind of tailor the mix to that side. Whereas with the in-game stuff, or if it's more of like kind of like a multiplayer thing, kind of like with Fortnite, it's just,
Mhm.
like I said, it's getting it to sit in the sense of whatever else is going on in the game at that
Gotcha.
point in time. And with a lot of the stuff, it's there's kind of rules put in place, by the lead designer, the audio director, like those kind of things as far as what do we want to focus on from a game mix perspective, or what do we want the player to hear while they're doing X action. And so
Yeah.
with that in mind, we kind of take it back and we're like, okay, well, we need an explosion here, but it can't just be any explosion. Do we need to make it more high frequency, low frequency, mid, to give it whatever emotion there, but also again to make it fit within the rest of the game context, and whatever else the player feedback needs to hear at that given time. Like things like Fortnite or any other kind of like battle royale games or multiplayer games. It's all about what the player needs to hear at that point in time. They need to hear the threat. They need to hear, the alerts. They need to hear the UI. And so being
What
able
am
to
I
kind of,
listening to in my headphones that's making
yeah,
me go, "Woo, woo."
exactly. And so we always have to try to tailor everything around that. We can't just have that one thing always be the singular focus. It might just be an additive detail into something, as opposed to being just like we're going to hear this full frequency sound all the time. So but
Yeah.
it's really about kind of living within the constraints of whatever the game is, or whatever that particular scene is, or whatever that particular moment in the game needs to be.
That's awesome. Speaking of Spider-Man 2 specifically, there are so many environments, weather
Right.
conditions,
Yes.
etc., battle, cutscenes. How did you all handle all of those different sounds? And we've seen it a few different times in like behind the scenes things and different things where it's like weird, wacky ways of making thunder, weird, wacky
Right.
ways of. Is there anything that you did that was kind of like a fun moment for
So
you where
yeah, well, I first off have to give a ton of thank you and credit to the Spider-Man 2, the Insomniac Spider-Man 2 team, and Sony and PDSG and the support groups out there. They let us in and they let us come in and help and have some fun in with them. And they did a fantastic job of making that game sound absolutely amazing. It's yeah, just listening to the end product was insane to me. Just the amount of detail that's in that game, and we were fortunate enough to be brought in to help really add with that detail. One of the fun things that I got to do that I was very I had a real good time and a good experimentation phase of doing this was helping out with the weather. So that you brought up the weather and the rain and the detail
yeah,
that's in the rain.
it's
um,
insane.
yeah, I got to work with Brooke Yap, who was the sound designer on that particular portion of the game, with working with weather and stuff. Also with Joanna Fang and Blake Collins from Sony, working with some of their assets and stuff. But working with the weather, we basically I basically got to be able to figure out a way to record rain on the specific materials that are in the world. So you can hear, rain on tarps or cloth or the concrete or
Yep.
cars, and so being able
Even
to,
the suit.
yeah, the suit itself, the suits themselves, between, even having the symbiote suit versus the regular cloth
Yeah.
suit versus a hoodie and things like
So
that.
much detail.
Yeah,
It's
and so
crazy.
yeah, so I got to be able to try to figure out a nice way of um recording that detail layer without having kind of the rain in the background. So being able to separate the
Mm.
raindrops themselves on the material to, to reflect what that material is getting hit with water, but not making it sound too wet or sound like it's raining in the background. So we have
Wow.
these additive layers. So yeah, it was very intensive. It was a lot of trial and error. The a few different ways of like trying to put water in containers and have them dripping out slowly with holes in them to try to get them to basically isolate those drops as much as
Yeah.
possible and really flesh out that stuff. So trying with different containers, a lot of different fun things was just like letting my hose run at a very like or like low volume out, and then just running it over my hand and let the water drip off my hand, so you get that randomness in there, and
That's
then
so
like
cool.
recording it on, like I have like I had like almost like two clotheslines hung up with different materials on them, so I could get the patter of the water on that particular material. And so I laid out so much stuff, everything from wetsuits to towels and just different, all sorts of like fake grass and just all sorts of different materials I just had laying around, and just being able to kind of tailor that out. That was one of the most fun things I've done in a while, of just trying to figure out like how can we really do this,
That
because it's
that seems so much like those old Star Wars behind the
right.
scenes where you're seeing like them like flapping those metal pieces
Right.
to try to that it seems like you went through a little bit of a different version of that having to do specifically with the rain.
Yeah.
Kudos on that.
Oh, thank
It's
you. Yeah.
so clear how much detail went
Yeah.
into just those weather effects, but the rain, hearing you talk about that, I'm just like, yeah, it did do that, didn't it? So this next question might be a little bit difficult because it
Okay.
requires you to brag about yourself a little bit. And
Okay.
I
Okay.
know that
Yeah, that's gonna be nice.
sometimes those artists have a hard time doing that. In a world of deadlines hurting the quality of work,
Ooh, yeah.
your company, Injected Audio Senses, prides itself on quality and timeliness. What goes into that success? How do you fully get that? And how do you get a reputation of being like the one to bring in if you need something done like that?
Yeah, that I mean that a lot of that comes from my background. And I started off I was in more of like a commercial recording studio. And so we did a lot of sessions where we're very timed. We have an actor to come in for ADR, and it's like, you have 2 hours and you have to do this within this time. And we had X amount of time to do it. And a lot of it was just boom, 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 boom. And you have to be set up, you have to be ready. So a lot of that's kind of like built into my background. And then when I got more into game audio and working with studios, there was a point at one of the studios I was working at. It was myself and uh, my who was my boss at the time, Mark McBride, who is now kind of my right hand man in this. Um, it was two of us, and we were at a studio working on 5 titles at once, and it
Oh
was
my
just like this
goodness.
madness. We were the only two audio people there for a while, and it was
Uh,
we were just going boom, 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 boom. So again, building that into kind of my background, and being able to accomplish what we did when I was there with those short amount of times, kind of built that into when I started this company. It really built that into how we wanted to approach these things. We wanted to give a high quality bar. We wanted to be able to do it within a quick amount of time so the customers aren't, our clients aren't overpaying, or,
yeah.
like they feel like they're getting value out of it. And so we just really built that into, kind of the premise of our company, is being able to turn things around quickly, being able to evaluate the actual needs for that time, because everything is on a timeline, and that is a hard thing to really quantify. And sometimes it's very hard to say we need to cut this out, but we can come in and make those decisions. Hey, what do you guys need within this time frame? Okay, we can give you this, we can give you this, we can give you this. If you want this, it might be a little bit longer. Are you guys okay with that? And so there's a lot of kind of back and forth in there. And sometimes there's compromise. Sometimes we can we can get in things that we want to get, or sometimes we can't. We just have to kind of work with the time we have. um but kind of similarly on that note, one of the things we've really built into our company, and with my with our team and our employees, it's like, hey, never be married to your work, never be married to your sounds. Both both a criticism perspective, because hey, someone's our client, they're going to want X, let's deliver them X. But also at the same time, if we have to cut this or we have to lower this because of time constraints, it be okay with that. We have to be that. We have to work within this, and we'll give them the best that we can within that time period.
I think that's a great thing to tell younger people that are working on wanting to do sound design is you're in a high stress job. Like
Right,
every day you're walking in and your deadline is sometimes those 2 hours, sometimes you have
right.
a week to get a whole project done. I think that's a really great piece of advice for younger sound designers of
Yep.
don't be married to this situation. Like you're having to change things on a daily basis. You
Mhm.
can't be stuck in that mindset or you're going to drive yourself crazy and you're going to burn out so quickly.
Yeah. And
I
that the tune of it also, I mean, from a creative person, a music background, I
Mhm.
love art. I love, like, for the artist itself, it's never going to be perfect, right? So you have
Yeah.
to be able to learn how to, like, when is that cutoff point? When is the customer happy? When is all, like, and again, not being married to it, it's really just like being able to back off and say, okay, this is where I'm happy with it. It's not going to be perfect, but if we have had something, cut, or time cut down, what can we learn from that and use that next time, and how would we be able to fit that in next time? Is there an easy way to
Just
do that? um
stacking
yeah.
those understandings.
Yep. So it's just really just live and learn, and then prioritize at that point. So
It seems like you have such a vast knowledge of this
oh, thank
industry,
you. I hope so.
and that's it's so exciting to hear people that are so passionate about what they do and so passionate that they want people to understand fully, like these are the expectations, these are the understandings, but also we want you to have a life. We want you to understand how to
Right.
balance these things.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Running into that last one, this is actually a question that we ask all of our guests at the end of the interview.
Mhm.
What is one memory in your time of working in the gaming industry that will stay with you forever as a happy memory?
Ooh,
Try not
that's
to give us anything that might get you in trouble,
yeah, 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 yeah.
but
That's God, I have so many. Like, there's so much over the years with just different points in my career. This is a tough one. I'll take something from kind of early on. Back when I was working on back when I was working in the commercial studio, which is a studio in San Diego called Studio West. And they're still there. Great group of guys. Really just being under the fire of working with some of these professional actors and stuff. And I think I was just kind of getting started in. We were doing a lot of trailers. We were doing a lot of cinematic work for different companies. I think the first time, yeah, this would have been like I was able to work. I was able to record voices for Star Wars: The Old Republic. Um, and so we had a bunch of actors come in because there's, I mean, we obviously know how much dialogue was recorded for
Yeah,
that MMO. It was insane.
so much.
Um, and we would have, you know, they were casting actors all over. And so, I was in San Diego, still in San Diego. But they had a bunch of actors from San Diego, so they brought them in. And I got to work with one guy, Miles Anderson, and he must have done. We had like an 8-hour session to record voices, and we must have done, I don't know, 15 to 20 characters in a day. And he's all over that game as just different Imperial officers and kind of British and
Yeah.
European accents and things like that. And he just did so many different voices, and that was really kind of, I think, one of the early points that solidified it for me. Like I really want to be doing this, and I really want to be working on this. And we'd already done some little things here and there, but I was like, the fact that I get to be a part of Star Wars: The Old Public recording dialogue for that very early on, which led to more dialogue sessions with other things, which kind of led to more and more, and meeting the people that I got to meet. And including I don't want to name drop too much, but I got to work with Ashley Eckstein on some Clone Wars stuff early on, because she was living in San Diego at the time, so she would come up to the studio, and that was, I mean, she's just amazing. So it's
She's
like that little
amazing.
yeah, absolutely. The passion there. Even this was right when Clone Wars was getting started, so Ahsoka was still young, the character was
Yeah.
still young, and but you could still see that passion
I
like
don't know if you
that
can
early
see, but
on.
got
Yeah,
right there and
absolutely.
right there
Yes.
and right there.
Yes,
And
all over. And she was just very just amazing to everybody in the studio. And I mean, just as you kind of see everything online, she's it was just exactly like that. So like I think overall, to answer your question, that early point of my career, which really just kind
yeah,
of solidified, I think at that point I was
I've
kind of
made
like
it.
really, yeah, I was really teetering on like, okay, do I want to work on music production? Do I want to be doing post production? Do I want to be working with games? And I think that little era really solidified a lot of stuff of like the direction I wanted to go in my career.
What a way to solidify it
Yeah,
too. With
absolutely.
Star
I
Wars,
know, so lucky, so lucky.
being able to say
Very
like,
fortunate.
oh yeah, like no big deal. But I happened to work on some of the biggest Star Wars things
Yeah,
in the
it
past
was
20 years.
it was fun. It was very fun. Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Well, we just want to thank you so much for joining us on our We Interview series.
No,
The
thank you.
passion that you have for your job is so clear,
No,
and it's
thank you.
always so much fun. Where can people find you? Where we already talked about Injected Audio Senses, your company.
Yep.
Is there anything else you would like to plug? Is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all over LinkedIn, Facebook. We're on Twitter, X, just on Injected Senses Audio, and so yeah, just kind of all over on the web. Injectedsenses.com is our website, which needs to be vastly updated. we had, we that's one of those tough things to do, but yeah,
Hey,
yeah, yeah, no, all over the standard social media stuff. So
well, thank
on
you
there. But
so
yeah, very
very
much
much.
we're very much inclined to talk with up and coming people and people who want to get to industry. We have a great crew of people. Our team loves to do that networking and education and talking with the people who are up and coming. So just feel
I
free to
love
hit me up,
that.
and we'll talk.
I love that.
Yep.
Gary, thank you so very much for your time. We
Yeah, thank
appreciate
you, Adam.
you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much.